Okay, so today we're going to be looking at material for demo number 3, and that'll include everything from working with the type tools inside of Illustrator to the pathfinder tools for cleaning up vectors and working with moving graphics to packaging. And so we have some things to work with on that. I'm going to show just real quick, go through and download the actual packaging template, which is inside the project additional resources page for project 2. And it's down here where it says demo packaging template. Now we'll also use later this part down here that says demo pattern text. That's also floating around in there. We will utilize that when we get into playing with some patterning tools inside of Illustrator. But I'm going to go ahead and download the packaging. And if you're in Firefox, it'll pull up a menu that looks like this. But you want to make sure that you actually download it, because all this is doing is showing you a web-based preview. So you have to locate where the appropriate internet download tool icon is. It's usually a down arrow pointing off of a sheet of paper or of some kind. So that'll get it out of the web browser and into your computer somewhere. Always make sure that you can identify where it goes. If you're in Firefox, you can click on this big gray arrow up here on the bar, and you can actually locate whatever you've downloaded. And if you're on a Mac, it'll give you a little spyglass next to what it's called, and it'll take you straight to wherever it's being saved. So you'll know where to get it from in the computer. All right. Now, back to Illustrator. Now, from where we left off last time, we finished up by tracing an image and adding our base level graphics to cover our poster area. We also still have things floating around in here like placeholder text for different parts of the imagery. And so we're going to start off by looking at the type tools, and then we will go in and manipulate some of the text in the poster. So to start showing the type tools, we're going to practice over on our second artboard that we have on our document. And so I'm just pulling that into view. And we know a little bit about the type tools so far. We're aware that we can make a type box out of it and we can put text in it, which are all great things, but they're really just kickstarters. So what I want us to do today is to go back to the type tool in the toolbar, and we're going to actually examine these things, what they do one by one. So start off with the basic type tool, the T. And I want you to come out into your artboard area, and I'm going to change my color up here at the top because it was set to white, and drawing white text on a white background just won't do. It will be invisible. So I've got my type tool going, black text is ready to roll out, and we're going to start off by looking at this tool because it does two main functions. First off, you can click and drag to create what's called a text box. Okay, kind of the basic, right? Right. And basically it just constrains text to a box-based perimeter area. Now I'm going to deselect my type tool by going to my arrow tool real quick. And I'm going to go back to my text box that's just kind of floating around out here. There are a couple things you should notice about this, the text box. Number one, if I try to resize the text box, all of my text actually just kind of moves around and tries to reorient itself in the box without changing its scale, size, style, or any of that stuff. Nothing gets distorted. It just slides it around onto the next line where available. Other things you'll notice, as you collapse text with this box, if your box gets too small, your text goes away, and it pops up a little red box right next to your text box. This little red box actually signifies that there is overflow text or spill text that is being cut off. So we have to solve that problem if we see that, unless you don't mind information being lost. But if you encounter this problem when you're working with your text, like in a paragraph, you can either A, choose to resize the box until the little red box goes away, or we can do what's called threading text. So I'm going to leave it shrunk down to where we get the little red air box. And threading text basically means to move text or continue text from one box into another. Layout designers do this a lot, especially with creating columns, getting text to read across pages. So we're going to do it here. So I've got my little red box visualized right here. I'm going to click on it once with my mouse. And when I do that, it pops up a little placement tool icon where my mouse is. And now I can click and drag out a second box on screen to continue my text into. So this can be pretty handy when you want to continue text across the screen or in different locations. And it always draws a connection line between the boxes to indicate that these two are linked together as far as the information is concerned between the two of them. And that's how you can sort of use the text box tool as a way for continuing text across the design area. Okay. So that's the first one as far as using the text box. Oh, another funny thing to watch. Besides resizing it, you can rotate it around the outside corners. But notice that if you rotate it, the text doesn't rotate. It just reorients itself to fit inside the perimeter of the box. So it's an interesting problem to have. It's a good one if you don't mind reshaping the text box for creative purposes. But it can be problematic if you actually wanted to rotate that text, right? So let's say we actually wanted to rotate this text. There are a couple ways that we can do that. The first thing we have to do is actually use what's called point type. So I'm going to delete these boxes real quick and start with point type. So go back to your type tool again. And this time just click inside the artboard. Don't drag, just click. And then type away. And you'll notice that if you keep typing, it just stays on that one line forever until you hit return to move to the next line. And this is very typical for point type. Point type's really great for like headlines or title lines, things that don't involve a lot of text. These make the most sense to use. What's also interesting about point type, I'm going to disengage the tool and go back to my black arrow tool at the top of the toolbar. If you resize this text box, your text gets stretched and gets distorted instantly. But the beauty is you can rotate the box and the text will rotate with it. So you have the distinct advantage of being able to rotate text with this particular way of using the type tool. You just have to be careful that you don't accidentally distort it in the midst of all that. Illustrator, they have a unique tool they've built into any of the type areas that you create. If you notice sticking out from the side of your text box, there's this little circle that pops out to the side of it. This actually allows you to convert your type between point type and text editing, like for a type box. So I'm going to double click on this little circle. And now if I try to rotate my text, it treats it just like a text box again, keeping the text in the same orientation while I rotate the box. But again, if I double click on that same little circle that sticks out, it'll give you a warning. It says the selection contains overset text. It's because of the way it's oriented. And a lot of it will be lost. Do you still want to continue? Yep. So you have to kind of be aware that when you do stuff like that, that you can lose text if it's bleeding off the or outside of the text box region. But that's just so you're aware of the existence of that part of the tool. A lot of people don't realize that. Or they end up doing it and they forget, or they're like, what is going on? That is what is happening. All right, so that's the first two type tools. at least with the first type tool, how it reacts in two different ways. Let's go in and let's use the next type tool. It's called area type, and we actually have to have something on screen to use this with. So before you start typing away with that thing, which you're not going to get far with, let's go into the shape tools, the shape drawing tools, and let's go down to the star. So go to your star tool, and I want you to drag out a nice big star, Texas size star that's black. And now, after you've drawn that star out, we're going to go back to the type tool, and let's go to area type tool. Now, first thing you need to notice about this tool when you bring it out, the type cursor is surrounded by a circle. That is Illustrator's way of indicating that it will create area type with it, which is just another way of saying that it will type inside of a shape space. So, to activate it, we have to click along the perimeter edge of the shape that we want to type in. So I'm going to click right here along the path edge of this star. And if you did it right, the whole shape should sort of disappear. And what's actually occurred is that you have converted this shape into a type box. Crazy. And so when you put type inside there, it stays completely constrained into the type area. Treating it just like a text box. Again, if you try to rotate the shape, it acts just like a text box. So go ahead and try, rotate it. Again, you get the same problems where the text stays straight, in line, doesn't distort while the shape moves around it. Again, depending on your purposes, that can be really advantageous, or it can be, it can make things difficult. But again, it gives you the ability to type within a space. You can even design shapes, custom shapes with your pen tool that are sealed up tight, and you can use this same tool on it. Great tool to use. So that's the basic of area type. It allows you to replace a shape. Good thing to note though, when using area type, it does remove the capability of adding color back to the shape. Okay, you can't add a fill color to this shape anymore, and you can't really add a stroke color to it because it assumes that it's a type box. So if your plan is to have text over the top of a shape that has color on it, you need to copy the shape before you apply your color to it. So you draw your star, and then what we'll do is we'll copy it. So we'll do Command-C, Command-V to copy. Define the second star as your text star. Fill it in with text. And I'll change up the color of this one over here so that you can actually see it. And then move them back in position to each other, and you have overlapping forms that can be seen. So now we have a text that has a shape that has color, and we have a text that can show inside of it. So that we have kind of an implied outliner form. Okay.
Command-C.
All right. So we'll look at a couple more type tools inside the toolbar before we move on. The next one we're going to use is called Type on a Path, and let's go ahead and put a little open pathway line on screen somewhere. So get out your pen tool and click around and make some open path lines. Make them curvy, make them soft, make them straight. And when you're done kind of drawing out your line, remember you can hit escape on the keyboard to turn off the tool to keep it from drawing continuously. All right, once you have a line kind of drawn out there, we are going to switch to the Type on a Path tool. And same as the area type tool, we'll click along the pathway of the path. And if you did it right, the path should disappear. Use your type on a path.
Okay.
Yeah, type on a path. And now start typing on that line. And now you've got type that follows around a squiggly line.
I have the coding for the shape that I copied because I forgot
Yes, this is what
that
I
I
wanted.
didn't have the
Bum,
text
bum,
copied
bum.
anymore.
Yeah.
Yay.
So this is kind of fun to use when you need text to move in a non-normative kind of way, right? Like if you want text to define a form, right? This could be a great tool for using that for. Or again, to follow a non-straight area. So type on a path makes that possible. I do want to show a couple little nuances with this tool that are present. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit for you to see these.
Yes.
So zoomed in, I'm about at 400% right now on mine, so I can see this. But on your type on a path, there are going to be some marker blue lines at the beginning of the path, the end of it, and right at the middle that allow you to control the flow of the text. So this first one I found is at the front of my path line where I started drawing from. And there's this little perpendicular line that shoots out of the path line. It's light blue. You have to be close to see it. It is really hard if you were too far away because it's about the same size as your type that's on there. But you can move your mouse over that line and you can click and drag on that line to change the starting position of where your text starts typing onto the path at. So if you want a little more control over where the type starts, you can use that to do that. You can also go to the middle of your path line, and there's another perpendicular line shooting out in the center of all your text. This one, if you click and drag up and down on it, will allow you to invert the location of the text. Instead of on top of the line, it goes underneath it. That's what I said. So you can quickly reorient it. And like there was a line at the front end, there's also one on the back end of the text, and that just allows you to squeeze in the text to end a little bit earlier than where it was, so you can push it inwards. Now they also give you options here. Notice that this tool also gives you that little red box plus sign so that you can continue your text on another thing or in a text box somewhere. So that option is present for you to be able to use. But that's how type on a path works. Again, it's kind of a fun tool depending on your application. You can get some interesting effects out of it.
It's just one word. It only put one word on my line.
It only put one word.
Yeah, I just put one.
All right. So the last one that I want to show you from the toolbar is going to be the tool that is in the bottom of the type tool. It's called Touch Type. Now, this tool is not new, but it hasn't been around forever. It's a very kind of interesting tool, and it helps kind of simplify certain processes. But what the Touch Type allows you to do is actually select an individual letter form, and it'll pop up, if you use it, it'll pop up a little box around that form for you to edit the type letter with. So what it allows me to do is shift the position of the letter around. If I just grab this little blue box or click on the letter itself, I can actually reorient all the text with it. I can shift its baseline, so it's kind of vertical position along the line of text. I can also use these other controllers, like I can rotate the letter. I can stretch the letter horizontally, or I can stretch it vertically. Often when this is being used in publishing and type design, it's used to help offset individual characters or correct problems with individual characters for visibility, readability, but to help create also offset text. So you can make giant letters, you can make microscopic little letters. They could even make them kind of grow in a row. So you get like one that's really big, one that's a little less big, and you can kind of play that game with it. But you can do all kinds of things with this tool. Again, it's kind of fun for developing individual letters. And that's touch type. Okay. All right, so that's all we're going to cover in the toolbar. Now, what I want to do is hop across the screen and take a look at the actual type panels. So if you don't have those open, and you probably don't, that's okay. We're going to go up to Window to turn them on, and go all the way down in the list till you get to where it says Type, and then click on Character. And you should get a new panel pop up called the Character panel. It will probably have several other panels connected to it, like Paragraph or OpenType. And I want to go through these because these are specific editors for working with type that you need to know about and need to know how to use. All right, so I'm going to start with just a fresh chunk of text out here. All right. So first off, in the character panel, obviously we have access to the touch type tool again. There it is right there. If you're trying to make a point, if you want it, you can get it right here too. But below that is our font family or typeface selection. Typically when you load it up, it's set to Myriad Pro. But we can click on that to access the full library that is installed with Illustrator. And if you have your own copy at home, there's even more that you can use through the Type Kit. The Adobe Type Kit is actually pretty fantastic. They have a truckload of fonts available to people who subscribe to the Creative Cloud that you can install and move with you in your documents that are not available with the standard install. So, kind of fun to play with. But as far as working with what we have in here, we have quite a bit. And the font sets, again, they run all kinds of categories. In terms of typography, you actually have quite a few different sort of character categories that are out there. So to give you a little bit of light on what types of typefaces are available, there are a few different kinds I'll highlight. One of them is called serifed fonts. Serif fonts are basically understood as fonts that have little decorations and ornaments around the edges of the letter forms or character forms. So to give you kind of a quick example, right here on screen, this is kind of a sort of basic idea of what a serif looks like. So instead of just having a letter S, we actually have these extra little lines that extend out from the ends. And those are all considered serifs. This particular typeface is also considered a slab serif font, so it has like these flat kind of podium pieces that connect to each letter. And that's considered a serif when it has these little decorations. That's a classic type of form that exists. There are many, 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 many of those out there. Even this bizarre type of black oak also has that same kind of effect to it. It's where it has these big, fat sort of connection points. So there are many different kinds of fonts that operate off of that type of appearance. The other type that's on the other side of that is called sans serif. Sans means without, and of course, without serifs means without ornaments. So what you get, those typical types are things like Helvetica is a fairly basic serif font or sans serif font. Most of your sans serifs are considered modern typefaces, primarily because they eliminate kind of the old world kind of articulated appearance that many typesetters would design with. So a lot of them are very simple, sleek, and straight-lined, no fancy edges. And that's what you typically get with a sans serif font. Now there's another kind of font that's out there. We're all familiar with like handwritten kind of looking fonts or cursive. Those typically fall into things like scripty fonts, if you will. So they look like they're very cursive-y, very flowy and dynamic, and interconnect with each other through lots of soft, curvy lines. The last kind is called or understood as display fonts. Display fonts are fonts that should never, under any circumstance, be used for paragraph text or what's known as body copy. So to give you some ideas of what those are, first off, let me see if I can find a good one in here for you. Start with this one, Bolas 93. It looks really pretty, you know, it's very designerly, but you would not want to have this font outlining an entire book, right? Like all the pages that you have to read, individual lines of text. This would be insane to have to read tons and tons of pages in this typeface. Communicatively, it does not communicate letter forms very clearly. It has an aesthetic approach to it that makes it really great for a couple words, like for a title, a slogan, or something like that, but not very effective for readability once you shrink it down or put it next to a lot of different words. So those are typically understood as display fonts, and there are a lot of those. Many of them, again, they have a very specific appearance to them that is not a typical typeface, and they always are very, very stylized. So you want to be very careful when picking out type for your own project or considering it for a project. Make sure that it communicates the idea that you're wanting to get across at the end of the day. Does it give the same feeling that your poster is supposed to communicate or your design is supposed to communicate? Does it point them at the right thing or the wrong thing? Like if I used a font, if one of these fonts looked like snow and I was trying to talk about the summer, right? Like two very opposite things. But very quickly we would understand visually that snow and summer don't go together. So rather than making haphazard, accidental type choices, be specific. Choose the thing that communicates your idea the quickest. There are many typefaces in here. A lot of people argue about what should be used in body copy versus headlines, whether it's serifed or sans serifed, and that's kind of wherever. A lot of that's contextual, but when you're playing around with your typefaces and looking at them, make sure they communicate your idea clearly. All right. So that's just a little bit of talking about the fonts. Also, things you'll notice in this menu, you'll sometimes see like an icon across from the title that looks like an O or a double T. Those are indications of what type of font file they are. The O stands for open type. So this is like fully editable type that can be adjusted. And then there's true type fonts, which typically are designed with vectors that are the most compatible between machines. And you see a lot more true type fonts that exist out there, and they're a little bit more professional as well. All right, so I'm going to land on Helvetica for a minute, and I want to show you the next option we have in our list here on the character panel. The next one down is called type styles or font style. So mostly, if you have a good, professional, well-designed typeface, it's going to have extra styles to show it by. And I'm not talking about like how you're able to like convert any typeface into bold or italic like in a word processing editor, because Illustrator doesn't do that. It only shows you what the typeface actually has available. So if it was professionally designed, there should be lots of options under here where it says regular on my screen. So if I look under Helvetica, I can find that there are about 6 different options that I can use to change up the way my text looks on screen. It has light options, which makes for a very thin line weight between the letters. There's bold, and then there's oblique, which is just a fancy word for italicized. And you'll find lots of these, but what's good to know about this is that you have access to visual variation instantly. So this can actually make it easier for you to achieve hierarchy in a design just by using the type style changes while maintaining the same font choice. So I've got like one word here that's for sample, so I'll just copy this and make another one and put it down below it. And I can change this one out to light, and so we can instantly see that there is a clear difference between these two samples, which is enough to make either one stand out from the other. So you use these to your advantage inside of your design when making type choices. Okay. All right, so let's get into some of these little nitty-gritty editors that are down below. Inside your type panel, you should see about 4 other little editors down below, or little drop boxes. The first one on the upper left is for controlling the type size. It looks like a double T icon. And that changes based on a point value, or PT, for the size of the font you currently have selected. So you can either A, select an entire type box, or double click in your type box to select individual letters or words to adjust their individual values. And that's just changing type size. Now, the other option that you have available to you after that is, what if you have multiple lines of text, like in a paragraph form? At some point, you may want to adjust the baseline distance, or what's also called leading, between rows of letters. So if we ever want to change the space here, which we mostly understand through, again, something like a word processor, is like double spacing, single spacing, all of that. That's called leading in the technical term inside here. So to do that, we use these double stacked A's over here, down below in your character panel. And you can use those to actually change the distance point value between multiple lines of text. So that'll allow you to either A, bring text closer together for the sake of like a title, or space it apart more for the sake of readability, if it's like for paragraph text. Typically paragraphs have more spacing between them than like single line, headlines, and those kinds of things. But you have to be careful with that for the sake of readability again, or legibility. All right. So that's leading. Let's move over to the next one over here that's below the type size that looks like a V/A. And this is actually called kerning. Kerning is a term for spacing between characters, or a spacing between 2 characters. So if I put my mouse between the letter E and the letter L, and then I switch the kerning value, it will slowly shift the E away from the L by fractions of a point. Now, you're not going to notice it if you just click once or twice. You have to like click and hold and let it go to really make it obvious. But you'll slowly see the distance between your letters increase as you go. And that's called kerning. My favorite example of this was from an old boss of mine. He had his door office plate with his name on it remade, and he got it back, and they had it up on his door, and he couldn't help but notice that his last name had suddenly become 2 words when it should have been 1. And his last name is Danforth, and it should have been fully connected as a word, but because of the design of the typeface that was being used, the kerning between the letters was so drastic that it completely spaced them apart enough to look like 2 separate words. So it was ridiculous. But that just shows that there are times when a typeface is designed that it's not perfectly spaced. And so sometimes type designers will come in and make these adjustments to push letters apart or pull them back together. Some people will even pull them back together for dramatic effect, or kind of creative stylized effect, to where you can actually join letters if you bring them close enough. like this. So suddenly my E and my L become like a new letter form. So you can even play with it in that way. All right, so that's kerning. And then the last one is called tracking. And that's the V with the A inside of a little box. And that one just allows you to change the spacing between multiple letters. So if you change those values, it actually starts spacing out all the letters away from each other. Again, same concept as kerning. Is just the ability to leverage readability and change it for the sake of style inside the design. Okay, now if you don't see these options on your character menu that I have down below, all I did was turn on the more options for the panel. So to activate more options for a panel, usually there's a little icon that floats along the panel tabs that you're on over on the upper right of that panel. And there's probably, you can click on it and it'll pull up a menu that looks like this. And you can click on where it says, at least on your screen, it'll probably say more options or show options. And then you get like all these extra manipulators that you can switch up text with. All right, so that's the character panel. The last panel I want to show you is the one next to it called paragraph. And I'll just show you this one briefly. Paragraph, this is where you can set up the way that your text is justified, like within paragraphs, whether it's centered, justified to the right or the left, or if it has full justification with hanging indents at the bottom. Now, any one of those are useful for playing with. There are things that you may have to watch for in your design when using this tool for correcting problems. A common problem that usually arises is an issue called ragging or rag text. So I want to show you rag text over here. I'm going to go over to my, my poster real quick. And if you look down here, this body paragraph looks really pretty on one side, right? Because it's all aligned over to the left. But over here, you've got this lovely sloppy line of text and letters snaking around. That's called the rag of the text, is this outer edge out here. And commonly when working with it in design, depending on the purposes of that text, sometimes it's cleaner for it to be read as justified text if it's meant to fit in like a little boxed area like this. You really want to switch it out for the sake of readability. So one thing I recommend is getting that, going to your paragraph tab and clicking on justify. Now we still have to be careful because justify does weird things. Like it can add extra spacing into one line of letters if there aren't enough words up there to accommodate all of the rest of the size of the box. So then you get funky gaps in things because there just aren't enough words. So that's where you have to go in and make corrections like to the kerning or the tracking of words so they space out and fill the space correctly. You may also have to go in and like remove words or change the way something's written so that the text reads a little bit more applicably. Another option that is typically turned on inside the paragraph panel is called hyphenate. Hyphenate is like the worst, probably the worst thing you can use when trying to create paragraph text. If we're familiar with hyphenation from working in English, you know that it allows you the ability mechanically in language to continue words down multiple lines. So right here where it says Aristone, it's actually hyphenated. There's a little dash and then the rest of the word continues on the next line. This actually decreases readability in text for people instantly. So rather than having that present in your design, uncheck hyphenate for any paragraph body text that you've created, and that will remove it from there. Now, it does create the instant problems of extra gaps in your text. It actually creates things that are called valleys or rivers through your text where it looks like there's like an implied pathway down through your text that you can draw a line through. And those are harder to get rid of. But again, if you change up your type sizes, work with kerning and those things, it'll help get rid of that stuff pretty quick. But just be aware of it. It does help it read faster than this, and will make it look cleaner in the design if you get it to meet up with different edges or things that you're supposed to be meeting it up with, if it's supposed to be fitting in a block area. Justify also works great when putting text inside of shapes or irregular forms too, by the way. All right. So that's now that's all I really want to show you guys in terms of working with the type tools that are available to you. There's one last panel that is available called glyphs. It's this funky special letter A icon panel. This one's actually entertaining because it gives you access to what are called symbols. So if you're typing in a box, for instance, and you want to add, whoa, that is microscopic text. Let's blow that up.
I don't know. It's not in my windows either.
Yeah. If you don't see glyphs, by the way, this fancy A, it just means that it's not turned on. So go to Window, and then you should be able to find it in your type area and go to glyphs. And that'll pop it up. Anytime you don't see a panel, it's just not turned on. You can always go to Windows to find it. But again, the benefit of glyphs is that you can insert special characters that you can't get just by typing with your keyboard. So it gives you access to all of them for a specific typeface that you have active. So in the case of this, like with Helvetica, there's a pretty extensive collection because of how old this font is and how well designed it is. It has multiple language fonts in terms of linguistical font indications, Greek letters, and then again the special characters. So you even have things like a bullet point that you can drop in. And other sort of special characters. I think they even have like copyright, right protected, those kinds of things. So this gives you access to those. Not every typeface is going to have these available, by the way. Again, it all depends on the original type designer if they actually created these for the typeface or not. Most of the time, if you're ever hunting and looking for like free fonts, right, like on the web, there are a lot of those, but a lot of them are really quickly made, and by that they are only minimally made. So only a handful of characters are available, or the basic alphabet, but you can't get them in bold, and those kinds of things.
Sounds about right.
That is usually the product, again, of free available fonts, is that they are highly limited. The professional ones usually cost money, or there's standard ones that are available on all machines. But they usually have a lot of options. All right, so that's the glyphs panel. Just so you're aware of it before we leave it. Okay, so what I want us to do with this next part, we're gonna actually just, we're gonna clean up the poster text now instead. So we're done playing with the type tools for a minute. And now what we're gonna do is go into our poster and actually manipulate the type text that is present. So the first things we need to do, we're going to actually use a specific typeface for working with the poster. We'll use one called Futura. And so if you go over and let's start with the title, okay? So the part where it says language over the mouth. And if you don't have that there, that's okay. You can add a new type box for it. And we'll select that box of text that says language. Again, it should have a greater than or less than symbol on either side of the word. Again, per the original sketch image. And we're going to change up the typeface. So I'm going to select the name of the font over in the character panel, and I'm going to type in Futura, F-U-T-U-R-A. And it'll pull up all of my options, my style options. And I'm going to use Futura Extra Bold, Condensed.
Mine's not showing up for some reason.
What color is your text?
Black?
What color is it? Is it being typed over a black area?
No blue.
Is it on the right position in the layer stack?
Yeah, it's on top.
It's on top. Okay. Let's look real quick. Alright, so where is the type? Target it real quick for me. Over in your layer panel, click on the target circle across from it over on the right. Okay, it says it's there. What size is your type? Okay, look at this type size. Yeah, that's fine. Always double check your type size. If it's bigger than your box, it's not going to show anything.
There we go.
So the typeface you want to find for this is going to be Futura.
Is it condensed?
You want to use the version you want to use is the condensed extra bold. That's the big thick option. So it should look kind of like mine. Again, when you're working with this, try to maintain your hierarchy, right? Maintain the same color swatch that you've been utilizing from the get-go so that you're maintaining visual theme. All right, so you got that converted. Good job. Make sure that the text fills out the center of the mouth, kind of like mine. Again, you may have to resize it or scale up your letters using your type size options or dragging out your text box to make it bigger. But you want to make sure it fits in there pretty well and holds its ground. Now, once you're done with that, we're going to make some adjustments to the paragraph text down below. So we're going to go with each paragraph text box, and we're going to change those also to Futura, but we're going to switch them to Futura Medium. So go back to your character box, type in Futura, and then use Futura Medium from the drop-down. Medium is the style. And we might even like to bump up the font. It doesn't hurt like to put it up at about 12 or even 14 point is not bad if you want like readability. 12 point's pretty typical actually, but either of those is fine. So you can use either of those sizes for your paragraph text. Again, go through each of your paragraphs and doing the same thing. Changing them out for Futura Medium and setting them up as 14 point size type. And while you're at it, go ahead and clean up the appearance of the justification text. So rather than leaving it with like really gross looking kind of ragish kind of outlines, let's go ahead and make them fully justified text. So which tab do we use to change justification? Anybody remember?
Paragraph.
Paragraph. Good call. So switch to paragraph and then use one of the justification icons or fully justify to make your text fit wall to wall inside of the box. Now again, you can change up your lettering color according to whatever's in your scheme to fit. Always think of how it contrasts in the design, okay? That's always important to make it more readable and make it more visually tied together. Is what colors are available to you that you've set up a rule for and which ones make it stand out the clearest. So look for things like that when you're considering that. Also on a note, when putting in text like a title line or big text, is make sure that you're choosing a style or approach of line thickness that's appropriate compared to design elements around it. Like you wouldn't want to use like a really fine line font and all of the lines around it are also really fine lined. The reason for that is that everything starts looking the same and it all starts getting mixed up together. So kind of watch for that to give yourself some room to give variation in the design. Okay, so we got that adjusted. So we're doing pretty good. That takes care of most of that. The last thing that we want to change out text-wise is this text pattern that's supposed to go behind the mouth that fills in the back of the screen. What we're going to do to change that is actually use what's called a pattern, and we're going to create it from text. So this is actually a great tool to know how to use. We're going to develop it over here on this extra artboard though. So go over to your extra artboard, and we're just going to make a little text box to start with. And then the sample text for the demo is actually on Blackboard. So I'm going to go back to Blackboard real quick. And inside the Project 2 Additional Resources folder at the very bottom, there is this sample text down there that says Demo Pattern Text. And in parentheses, it'll tell you, use the text in this box in your demo file. So what we're going to do is we're going to select all this text and copy it by using Command-C, since we're on a Mac. And then we will go back to Illustrator and then paste it inside of your box using Command-V, as in Victor. All right, now if yours pasted in like mine, that's because I've been playing with the character options, and so all of my text looks like it's overlapping each other. So I'm going to correct that real fast. Let's go back here, check my leading, and put it on auto. And I might also change the overall size of my text to something much, much smaller so I can see all of my text. But when you paste it in, it probably will come out something kind of like this. So we want to make sure that our text box is probably about the same size as our text approximately. So you may want to shrink that box in until it shows just the text. And you can also make choices at this point as to what typeface, what color the text should be in, what size it should be in, all of those things. Again, since we're maintaining it with our design, we want to use Futura. We don't have to use medium. We could use another option. We could use condensed medium if we wanted to kind of change it up again in the design. So I'm going to use condensed medium on mine. And I'll make sure that my text is fully justified. And I'll adjust my box to try to get things to fit. Fully justified in this case for this particular pattern, because we're copying over computer programming functions for the sake of talking about coding languages on the poster. You don't necessarily have to have hyphenate unchecked for this, because it doesn't matter in this case. We're not looking for readability when we are trying to create pattern. All right, so I've got this made. I know that in terms of my design, my background is black behind my screen, or my screen text, so I know I don't want to make a pattern out of black text to put on a black design. Okay, that's a bad idea. So I'm going to quickly change the color of this text on screen to fit a color from my theme. So I'll go back to my swatch. And I'm going to pick out maybe my kind of light blue tone that I'm using in my design from the Russian poster swatch. And with this selected, again, you don't need to have the text highlighted, but just use your black arrow tool to highlight the text box or select it. We're now going to convert it into a pattern. And we're going to do that by going to Object from the top menu. And then we're going to go down to Pattern and go to Make. Now you'll get a pop-up that'll tell you it's just added a brand new pattern to your swatch panel. Any changes you make while you're in editing mode will be applied to it upon exit. So we'll say, okay, great. And on screen, you will have a preview of what the pattern will look like if it were applied inside of an object as a fill. That's what we get the option to do with patterns, is apply it as like a fill color to an object or an appearance. So when I look in here, I can see like what it looks like when it's gridded on screen. I have a pop-up window that's available for me to change pattern options. So I can change the way it tiles it, from grid to bricks to where it offsets them side by side, or hexagon. I can change the name of the pattern, which doesn't hurt whenever you're hunting through these. So I may call mine text pattern. And then things down below that you have are like things you can change, like width and height. This actually changes the distances of the copies from each other. So if you shrink in these numbers or blow them out, the copies get further away. So I can change this to like height can be 5, and instantly there is spacing between each of my reciprocated patterns. I could also set it back and drop it down.
Something happened. I didn't even touch anything. Like, I was sitting here and I looked away and I looked back and my screen just filled with a pattern. I didn't do anything.
So, and it's all of this is affected by what you have in your original pattern. If you paste more text into your original pattern box, your pattern blows out of the screen, potentially. But we can change our pattern while we're still in this viewer though. Like again, like we have it set for text, blue. I can still change and edit my text in this viewer. By just clicking on the original pattern image inside the blue box, I can manipulate its color on the fly. I can change up the character that I'm using. Any of that stuff will apply at this time. Now when you're all done playing around in here and having fun with it, we have to say done up here on this top gray bar that appears above your pattern area. And then it leaves this text alone, but in your swatch panel, you now have a brand new pattern added to your list of swatches. So go look in your pattern, your swatch panel. And you should see a new pattern added inside there that's named after whatever swatch you just created or pattern you just created. Now, we're going to apply it, okay? Because what we want to do is get rid of the placeholder text that we have inside of here. So I'm going to select that text box that my placeholder text is in, and I'm going to drag it off of the document because it's no good anymore. But what I will do is I want the original size of this, so I'm going to make another box rectangle using my rectangle tool and just draw a new box around this representative text shape to make one that's the same size. Now once I drop mine in, now it's applying it as white. It might be different on your screen depending on whatever color you last used. But I'm going to go ahead and select that rectangle and then move over to my swatch panel. And I'm going to select the swatch I just created. Now again, they list the new swatches like at the base of all of the multicolored typical swatches. So there's usually one in there that you just made if you made one. And if you renamed it, it'll have a name on it when you move your mouse over it. So you click on the swatch and it applies it to whatever shape you have currently selected. So now my pattern has been applied to this shape. And I can now bring this down and overlap it into my computer screen. And if I don't like the order that it's in terms of layer order, I can always send it down the layer stack by holding down the command key. And then I can use my open bracket key that's next to the letter P on your keyboard. And you can start sending it down in the design to where it appears behind the mouth.
Oh, did you do it again?
Yep.
I got lost.
Okay, which part did you stop on?
I got the size.
You
Should
made
I
it.
make a rectangle like?
Yeah. You're just making a rectangle that'll go over your screen area.
Okay.
So get your rectangle tool out and draw a new rectangle.
Over this?
Yeah,
The same size?
yeah, same size, because that should already be designed,
Okay.
right? The same as your screen area. But go ahead and resize it up, yeah, and then apply your swatch to it. So go to your swatch panel and find your demo text, and it should drop it on it immediately.
Ah,
See it?
I got it! Yay!
Great job. All right. So that's how we get that in. Now the last thing you can do is that if you don't want like the pattern combating with all the rest of the text on screen, we can do things like dummy it down by changing its opacity, kind of as a minimal approach. So if you want to change opacity, we have to use our appearance panel again. So to get back to appearances, you can either find it from window, or you can look over for the panel that looks like a little circle that's a sun or has a little dotted line around it. And that will give you access to the area where you can change out your opacity values for the selected shape you have. And that'll just give you the ability to kind of dumb it down if you don't want it combating for attention.
Question.
Yes.
Why convert it to pattern? Why not just leave it as text behind?
You can do either. This makes it easier if you want to do, again, if you have a little bit of text to work with and you just want to duplicate it a lot, or if you have like just a handful of shapes to work with that you don't want to have to go through the time of creating every single swatch of text or swatch of shapes. That's what the pattern builder saves you from. Sure, you could do something similar by lining up a bunch of text boxes and copying and pasting them. This just gives you another way to do it. And it gave me an excuse to show you the pattern tool.
That's pretty good.
Blair.
Oh, can you show that again? How did you get to the opacity?
Yeah, so to get to opacity, you're using the appearance panel,
Okay.
which looks like this little sun icon in the panel area. You turn that on and make sure you have the object selected out in your design that you want to edit. And then you can change based on the drop down for the stroke or fill for that object. In this case, it's the fill because that's where you put the pattern. And you click on the word opacity that's inside fill, and then you can change with a slider your options.
Okay, so I did have the pattern.
And that's how you can kind of work with that part. Again, pattern works great with anything. You could pattern out shapes really easily with that tool. It's pretty amazing. So I highly recommend it if it's something that you need to utilize in your design to create a supporting visual element. That's a quick way to get to it.
Where would that be under if it's not showing up on ours?
Say that again.
Where would that icon, like where would we go to get it and not showing up?
If you don't see this,
Yeah.
you go up to Window
Okay, so I could.
and then go to Appearance.
Okay.
Yep. Anytime you don't see a panel, go to the window from the menu icon and hunt for it from there. And you'll find it usually pretty quickly. All right. So that'll conclude this part of working with the text. Again, remember that with the text, there is also subtitles that go with this. So it's not just language. Remember, there's like a part at the bottom that says join the coding revolution. And there's another one that's in the upper lip as well, or in the teeth or wherever. So make sure that you add those into your respective designs. All right, so this concludes the part with the text. We'll look next at working with the Pathfinder tool and with looking at how to move design elements into object packaging templates.